Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion, and I get this question every single day. And to kind of give away the store a little bit, the updated edition of the New Revised Standard Version is usually the translation that I recommend. However, I usually start off by saying it depends. It depends on why you're engaging the text, how you want it to function. Do you want it to have a literary function? Do you want it to have a missionary function, an administrative function, an apologetic function? And what are you bringing to the table? Do you have degrees in English literature, or is English a second language for you? Are you looking for a translation for a 12-year-old? There are a lot of different reasons people engage the Bible, and so a lot of different dimensions of quality that can intersect. And usually when I tell people this, they say, I just want to try to get the closest to what the authors originally meant. So there's a degree of originalism that is being prioritized. Most of the time I'm asked this question. And so in determining which one is best, I consider three main dimensions of quality. One is the scholarship. What kinds of manuscripts are the translators relying on? What kinds of text critical decisions are they relying on? What kinds of theological dogmas and frameworks are going into how they're rendering the text? Another is the translation technique. Translation is really a balancing act. How much work is the translator willing to put in to bring the text closer to the target audience so that they have to do less work? And on the other side of that, we have translations that demand a lot of work from the target audience. They have to have an awful lot of understanding of the source culture in order to be able to get the most out of the translation. But that translation is therefore going to be closest to the source text. And so it's a balancing act between accessibility and faithfulness. So that's another dimension of quality. And that's usually going to be related to the third dimension of quality, which is the language register that's being used. How accessible is it to a reader of English? Is it accessible to somebody who understands English as a second language, or are they going to need to know an awful lot of the intricacies of how English works literarily, rhetorically, and all of that kind of stuff? But when we consider all of those things, and you're looking for a Bible that contains the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament together, I usually recommend the updated edition of the New Revised Standard Version. And the edition that I usually recommend right now is the SBL Study Bible, which just came out a couple years ago, because it has the entire NRSV UE, including the Apocrypha or the Deuterocanonical books. It has wonderful explanatory notes. It has wonderful introductions to the books, as well as little mini essays in sidebars that explain things here and there that usually you're not going to find in a translation. And then there's another study Bible, the Westminster Study Bible, that also incorporates the updated edition of the New Revised Standard Version that also just came out, that also has wonderful introductions, wonderful explanatory notes, and even essays and things like that. Now, before the NRSV UE came out a few years ago, I would recommend the 5th edition of the New Oxford Annotated Bible. And the 6th edition will be coming out in the next year or two, and that will incorporate the updated edition of the New Revised Standard Version. And I will probably shift my allegiances to that translation once it comes out, but we'll have to see how it goes. Now, there are other translations out there that are also very good in their own ways. The NASB does some good things. The NIV does some good things when it comes to accessibility, but it also presupposes univocality and inspiration, which means it's fiddling with the language and the translation in order to make it seem like it agrees in places where it actually disagrees. The ESV does some very good things, I think, but it is fundamentally a complementarian Bible translation. It is intended to defend the subordination of women to men. And so a lot of its translation choices are deeply problematic, and I don't recommend the ESV, and particularly not study editions of the ESV. If you're just looking for a Hebrew Bible, Robert Alter recently published his own translation of the Hebrew Bible that is very, very good and has a lot of explanatory notes. It's more of a literary project. And so a lot of the notes are going to discuss literary concerns as well as some theological concerns, but not so much text critical concerns and historical concerns and things like that. There's also the JPS Tanakh, which is the translation of the Jewish Publication Society. This is a Jewish translation. It is very good. The second edition of the Jewish Study Bible incorporates this translation and also has wonderful explanatory notes and things like that. There is also the very thorough JPS Torah commentary series, if you would like commentary from phenomenal scholars on the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible, the books of Moses. And there's also a wonderful Jewish annotated New Testament that uses the NRSV, but the explanatory notes, the introductions, the commentary come from Jewish scholars who are situating the New Testament within a Jewish context to explain how these things relate to what was going on within Judaism at the time. Now, if you're looking for just a New Testament on its own, I still think the NRSV UE does the best job of those that are available. Obviously, I don't agree with all of it. There are aspects of it that I criticize, but I think it's better than the other translations that are coming out. People will ask about David Bentley Hart's translation of the New Testament. That's an interesting project. I think it's a little idiosyncratic. I would love to have more explanatory notes. One of the main ideas was to render the English in a way that simulates the experience of the Greek reader. So if it's very sophisticated Greek, the English is going to be sophisticated. If it's very awkward Greek, the English is going to be very awkward. So it's a little idiosyncratic in that regard. Sarah Rudin has published her own translation of the Gospels that is very good. This uses transliteration for place names and personal names and things like that. It's going to be a little more sophisticated, so maybe a little less accessible for someone who does not have a strong grasp of the English language. And so in striking that balance between accessibility and faithfulness, I'm probably going to say the NRSV UE even for the New Testament. So those are the translations that I think do the best. Overall, the one that I think scores the highest when I consider all the different dimensions of quality and consider what people are coming to me asking about, I would say the updated edition of the NRSV UE is the best available translation. And the fit for this video has been Hotel.